Hello and welcome to our webinar on Biobased Products Procurement in the U.S. My name is Hiro Boala and I will be facilitating the webinar on behalf of the Sustainable Biomaterials Collaborative, the USDA BioPreferred Program, and the Responsible Purchasing Network. This is a co-hosted webinar by all three of our organizations and programs. We have a dynamic set of panelists for you today to share their experiences and insights with purchasing bio-based products. Soon, we will be hearing from Ron Buckhalt of the USDA BioPreferred Program, Alicia Culver from the Responsible Purchasing Network, and Karen Hamilton from King County of the state of Washington. Just a reminder, if a question pops in your head during the webinar, please just go ahead and type it into the chat box and we will get to it after all the presenters are done, and we'll be starting the Q&A session. So I know many of you are curious about this. We are recording this webinar and we will post it to our SBC website so you can rewatch it or share it with anyone who couldn't make it today. Let's just wait one more minute as people are getting onto the webinar and then we'll start. All right, our first presenter is Ron Buckhalt. Ron manages the USDA's BioPreferred Program, which is a mandatory federal procurement program that requires all federal agencies to buy and use bio-based products designed by the USDA. The program also has a voluntary consumer label, which is the USDA Certified Bio-Based Product Label, which Ron will be discussing. Ron has over 40 years of communications and public policy experience, having worked as a congressional press secretary, executive branch political appointee, public relations executive, communications consultant, lobbyist, radio and television newscaster, and video producer. As CEO of his own consulting firm, he provided legislative, public relations, educational, and management services to many small business clients and the federal government. For the last 18 years, he has been a USDA advocate for bio-based industrial products. Today, Ron will share with us the various drivers for buying bio-based products. Ron, I'm going to pass the mouse and keyboard controls to you now.
All right, let us hope you did that. I'm not seeing anything yet, but that doesn't mean it's not there. So, are the slides up on your end?
I'm seeing the slides here.
All righty. Show my screen. I'm back to the main screen.
All right, do you see it now?
You got it.
Okay.
Bring it up to full speed and we'll be ready to go. And I need to close that up so I can see it. All right, here we go. And I think we're ready now. Everybody can see the main slide, the blue slide, our new look. I noticed that the logo that we had on the advertisement for the program was the old green look. This is the blue look. It's the new look. We've redesigned, and you know how you do these things. So anyhow, thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to try to be as short and sweet as we can. It's about 10 after the hour, and by the half hour, I should be finished. If I'm not, somebody get a hook and pull me off, right? So here we go. He said confidently. There we go. Now, I went back to the other screen for me. What did we do wrong there? There we are. Let's do it like this one. Do I have control of the screen? Slides aren't.
Hi, Ron. You should have control of the screen. Do you want to just tell me next slide? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why I guess they advanced well when we were doing it the other day in practice, but that's always practice makes perfect. Is that the next one out?
I see statutory definition of bio-based products.
All right, I'm not going to read to you guys, and here I'll go and turn around and read to you, but we do have a law that we have to abide by, and there is a statutory definition that's in the 2002 Farm Bill, modified slightly for the 2008 Farm Bill. We're looking at something other than food or feed. These are renewable carbon materials, and many of those are agricultural, forestry, and marine materials. Next slide. Why are we doing this? The name of the game in this town right now is jobs, jobs, jobs. A lot of jobs are created up and down the sector from farm gate to the finished product, and the final connection is made when everybody buys something, or someone buys something, and someone sells something. We also have some energy and environmental security considerations in that a lot of these products are replacing petroleum-based materials. And certainly if we're using new renewable carbon to make these products, we're not using carbon that was sequestered hundreds of millions of years ago. We're using something sequestered hopefully this last year, and at worst we think we're putting back in what we took out of the air when plants take in carbon dioxide. Next slide. Indeed, I was talking about jobs. This gives you an idea where some of those jobs are located. You would think that all of them would be in the middle of the country since we're an agricultural-based program, but you look at this 403 out there these are 403 companies out in California, 168 in Texas, 166 in Florida, and you'll see up along the East Coast, New York, 159, and we do have a good share right in the middle of the country, 172 there in Illinois. But these companies are all up and down the chain. Next slide. Why are we doing this? Yeah, it's good for the environment. It's a great thing to do, but we have some directives which we as federal workers, federal employees, are implementing. The most recent thing was the February 21st presidential memo of this year, in which President Obama said that to the feds, in this case, you're going to do what you were supposed to do in 2002 when legislation was passed setting up this program, and we're going to expect to see something within a year. And so we're working very, very diligently to implement that presidential memo. Less recently, we have 2002 Farm Bill, 2008 Farm Bill, a couple of executive orders, and right now there is a federal acquisition regulation for those of you who read FAR. That was supposed to be a joke. It's kind of hard to, when you're not doing an audience, to know if people are laughing at your humor or not. In any event, the federal acquisition regulations will have contractors report on the purchase of bio-based products under federal contracts. This is something new and different. We've had a hard time getting at the numbers of how well we're doing or not doing. I think we're doing fairly well, actually, but numbers are tough to come by in the federal government, and this is a way to get the contractors to help us get a hold of some numbers that will tell us how well we are really doing. Next slide. This is the memorandum I alluded to, the February 21st memorandum, driving innovation and creating jobs in rural America. Promote economic development, new jobs, new markets. Next slide. 2002 Farm Bill, we have two parts to this program. We have a Federal Procurement Preference Program. We'll talk a good bit about this today, and we'll be talking at the end about a voluntary labeling program. I think that is the future. At some point, these two parts of the program are going to merge, and anything that's in one will be in the other. It's kind of tough. You're running a bifurcated program here that has two separate wings, but a lot of the things that apply to one apply to the other. Next slide. We'll talk first about the Federal Procurement Preference. And the program was patterned after the recycle program that EPA had set up many, many years ago. So that federal procurement preference is one thing we think that we can do is use the purchasing power of the federal government to pull the market for these bio-based products. We here at USDA, we set up categories of products. Right now we've got 77 categories, and tomorrow, this is kind of timely, tomorrow we'll be publishing a round. We publish it in rounds, round 9, with another 12 categories will be coming online. So I guess that'll give us what, 89? Yeah, 89 product categories on the 5th of June. So we set up these categories: preferred products, preferred federal purchasing, and feds are supposed to give preference to these products. Does it happen? Not always. And one of the excuses is it costs too much. I want to show you a slide at the end of this program that will speak to that myth. Next slide. 77 categories. We see that there are really 5 or 6 major areas that the federal government buys a lot of goods and services, mostly services. We don't buy things except for the Department of Defense. They buy military weapons, but we'll buy some cars and things like that. But by and large, the federal government operates through a series of service contracts: O&M, construction, janitorial, cleaning, vehicle maintenance, food service. What you're seeing is a roof, and that's actually the U.S. Department of Agriculture roof, and they're putting down a white roof coating there. It's a soy-based coating. And Washington, D.C. does get rather warm here in the summertime, and this will seal the roof just like an asphalt product would seal the roof. Next slide. You see on the right side of the screen some of the bio-based contents, and a couple of those are close, but none of those are exactly alike. We actually sit as a committee and decide where the industry is, what can we do to the highest bio-based content possible and still get the performance that we need from these products. So you look at something, I think the highest one there is the multi-purpose lubricant at 88%. And the lowest one is graffiti and grease removers at 34%. So that's just an example of how we look at the categories and try to determine what we can put in the categories that the federal government will buy and should be buying through service contracts by and large. Next slide. Another area is construction. The one that I really have a heartburn with, and we're going to get that corrected fairly shortly, are the carpets at 7%. When this was done back in 2003, 2004, at that point, we were not running the program. Another group inside USDA was, but there was a decision made that they were going to go for the entire carpet. At that time, there was only about 20% of the backing was made from the soy polymer. Now, the face is also made from a bio-based product. So if you were to do a whole carpet now, I think you would see a much, much higher product number there. Insulation foam, that's the same percentage you'll see with petroleum. This is a spray-in foam, so that really that's not a big difference there. The structural wall panels, the middle shot is kind of interesting. I've actually been to that facility that's down in Texas. Those are wheat straw walls. And those of you who know where the Natural Resources Defense Council is on New York Avenue here in Washington, D.C., their interior walls are made from compressed wheat straw. Next slide. Fleet, another place that we can do some real good in terms of having some very high bio-based content of some products, a lot of things that you can use in the shop. Next slide. This is the low-hanging fruit, and every contract issued by the federal government for janitorial services should contain language that will force the contractor to use bio-based products, bio-based cleaning products. A lot of those products that are in our program, and you see one in the middle now that does have a label already, as does the product on the bottom. Actually, all 3 of those have labels, so look at it. But the Ability One folks are supplying a lot of these products now, and their catalog, if those of you who follow Ability One, they have a lot of bio-based products in the catalog, and particularly cleaning products. So this is the one that really is a no-brainer because it's cost competitive, works as well or better. Next slide. So let's talk about that labeling program. You saw an introduction there just a moment ago to with the labeling program. And, you know, hindsight's always 20/20. If we had to do this over again, I would hope that the label would come first and then the federal side would come second, and let the label feed the federal side. But in any event, that's not the case, and we're in the market, and there are products that you'll find on your grocery shelves here in the DC market. We found a couple of products already that have made it through the process and are now on the market. So it's those products on the far right side of the screen. I won't call the company by name, although they'd love me to, but their whole product line, and these are cleaning products, are going to have the USDA certified bio-based product label. and that's what we must say by law on those labels. And we are putting also on their percentage. Next slide, go ahead. This is what the label looks like. And I'm not certain you can see it, but on this particular example, it shows the product 57%, USDA certified bio-based product. One of the things we're doing is we're not trying to do all this ourselves here in this small office we have. We're actually using a third party, ASTM International, to handle the processing of the applications and do a chain of custody over the product so that we make sure that it goes through an approved laboratory and the product can be affixed to the qualifying products. This is all done electronically except for the chain of custody of the products that are sent to a third-party lab for verification, or certification, actually, not just verification, certification of the bio-based product content. Next slide. Catalog contains both the FP, that's those are the federally preferred products, and the certified products. And some products you'll see in the catalog have both. And one of these days we're going to have it that you're not going to have to guess. We no need to have two separate lists of products if they'll all have the label and they'll all be federally preferred. That is our goal. We're working toward it. We are going to get there one of these days. Next slide. If you're with the federal government, you know the couple places you can buy. GSA Advantage sells mostly to the civilian side, DoD EMAL. We have a relationship with both of these catalogs and the folks who run them to be able to do some cross-fertilization and point people to a product that's in the GSA Advantage or the DoD EMAL and vice versa, that they point back to our program. We do not sell anything at our catalog, online catalog. It's a place for you to go and find products, and not all of those have made it yet onto the DoD EMAL or the GSA Advantage. It's just there's so many products out there, and it takes, for anybody who's trying to get in on one of these, GSA Advantage or with DoD, it's not an easy process. You're looking at a year or more for products that are fairly straightforward. So, but they are, both of those folks, GSA and DoD, are trying to put as many green and bio-based products into their catalogs as possible. Next slide. I have moved so quickly here, I'm going to spend some time on this one. I'm getting right near the end of our presentation. So I said early on when we started this presentation that one of the things we hear from people say, I don't want to buy that, it's too expensive. You can see the numbers just like I can. Hand sanitizers, slightly cheaper. Laundry detergent, cheaper. Ink remover, cheaper, the bio-based product. Bathroom cleaners, multi-purpose greases, metalworking fluids, two-cycle engine oils, graffiti, and grease remover. And there's another couple of these slides which I did not put in there. We actually went and compared apple for apple, orange for orange, to see how these prices stacked up. Yes, in some instances they are more expensive, but in many instances that is not the case. So that excuse just doesn't wash anymore for folks who want to use it when it's too expensive. And part of the concept of using a federal purchasing program was to pull down the price by increasing the volume of purchase and the volume of product being produced. So we think in that extent that it's working, certainly in the products that you see here. Next slide. I talked early on about the executive, not executive order, it's the presidential memo. They say, what's the difference between an executive order and a presidential memo? One's got a number, the other one doesn't. So a presidential memo was issued on February 21st. We'll be talking about that on the 19th of the month. That's what, a week out, a week and a day, two weeks and a day, excuse me, from this seminar today. And we'll have a guy from the White House who was very, very instrumental. He's with the Domestic Policy Council, and Cindy Valena from OMB will be there, and Linda, who works for us, will be talking about the bio-based program and some of the things you can do. And I think it'll be an interesting seminar. It's a free seminar, and one of the things we're finding here in Washington is, thanks to some of our friends who didn't know how to spend their money correctly when they traveled, we're in a real world of hurt, and folks being to be able to go and take training now at various venues. which is one of the reasons I'm so grateful for you guys today for putting this seminar together. And again, we're going to have a seminar on the 19th. It's going to be mostly on the memorandum, the Presidential Memorandum, and its impact on you and your business and buying and using bio-based products. So again, take a look at our website. You can register there, or you can just biopreferred.gov is a place to register. I think we have one last slide there, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. That's me. Send me a note. Don't call me. That sounds like an awful thing to say, but it's easier for me to respond to an email than it is to get in a long-winded phone conversation. And it's probably not on the fault of the person calling in. It's probably on this end. But anyway, we're there, Ron D. Buckhalt at dm.usda.gov. So if you want to get more information or get in contact with us, please do so. So that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ron. Just a reminder, we have been getting quite a few questions here, so we won't be getting to those until after our next two presenters have gone also, and we'll keep diving right into it. We have Alicia Culver next. Alicia is the Executive Director of the Responsible Purchasing Network, an international network dedicated to advancing sustainable procurement policies and practices among government agencies and public institutions. RPN uses the power of the purse to promote green buildings, toxics reduction, manufacturer responsibility, and green-collar job creation, and to help government agencies, businesses, and institutions meet their climate protection, zero waste, and other sustainability goals. Alicia has nearly 2 decades of experience working in the sustainable procurement field. She got her start in 1994 evaluating the federal government's environmentally preferable purchasing efforts as coordinator of the Government Purchasing Project based in DC. She later served as Deputy Director of the New Jersey Office of Sustainability, and in 2004 founded the Green Purchasing Institute. Alicia has worked directly with the procurement and environmental program staff of dozens of cities, counties, states, and federal agencies to demand a wide range of cutting-edge green products, including asthma-safe cleaning products, low mercury lighting equipment, locally grown produce, and truly compostable food service ware. On that last note, Alicia helped the SBC, the Sustainable Biomaterials Collaborative, convert the biospecs for food service ware into purchasing specs, and that's what she will tell us about today. Alicia, I am now going to make you the presenter.
Okay, I have my thing up on the screen. Okay, I see. Show my screen. Can you let me know when you actually see my screen?
Not quite yet. And now we see it.
Okay. So, okay, is that a full screen now?
Yes, it is.
Great. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We have quite a nice crowd today, so we're excited to be able to talk with you about the new purchasing specifications for compostable food service ware. Thank you for that great background, Ron, and also for SBC for pulling this webinar together. We've been excited about collaborating. I'm going to talk with you today about the purchasing specifications called the BioSpecs for purchasers, and then also let you know a little bit about some of the work that we've done with some of the earlier adopters, and then encourage anyone who is interested in utilizing the purchasing specifications to contact us. So let me just tell you a little bit about Responsible Purchasing Network if you're not familiar with us. We're an international network of various different state and local governments and businesses and nonprofit organizations, and we work together to make sure that we're not recreating the wheel and share resources such as the BioSpecs and other information both on our website and through various different types of venues. We have a number of resources that are available to our members, and some of the resources are available online as well. We have responsible purchasing guides for about 15 product categories, including one on food service ware. We do webinars often on about a monthly basis on green procurement topics that are of most interest to our members, and we have a newsletter and various other information on our website, including purchasing policies, tracking materials, and calculators. So I had the opportunity over the last year to work with SBC to, as Harel mentioned, to take the information that they've been putting together, which I fondly call sort of the lead standard for compostable food service ware, and take those biospecs that they're working with to try to steer industry towards manufacturing truly sustainable compostable food service ware, and figure out how do we take that information and put it into formats that purchasers can use. Now, I know from my experience that purchasers use lots of different formats. They use specifications, sometimes they use point systems, sometimes they use vendor questionnaires, and so we're working with various partners to tailor the specifications into the various types of procurement documents that are being utilized by different types of government and other institutions. And you can find all the information, the biospecs, as well as sample bid evaluation sheets on the sustainablebiomaterials.org website. So it's important to just note at the beginning that the biospecs, which are essentially the specifications on the environmental side for compostable food service ware, are utilized in conjunction with other types of information that purchasers might use in order to purchase either just compostable food service ware or maybe add compostable food service ware to their contract. So once the biospecs are utilized, we're also incorporating that information into looking at things like the design requirements for the different types of products. And I'm going to talk at the end about performance testing, because that's important. So how do these products perform during their use? How do you performance test these products to make sure that they are going to work? What are the availability of products from local vendors, and how do you screen? Right now, we do not have currently a list of products that would in a sense, even pass all the mandatory criteria. I know this is something that SBC is working on developing. And then also the issue is how much do these things cost? And styrofoam, we know, is relatively inexpensive. Compostable food service ware may be more expensive, but it's important to look at and take a whole systems approach to cost to make sure that you're looking at the benefits of being able to easily compost your food waste and therefore avoid landfill tipping fees. And we'll talk about how to look at the best value for this and how to negotiate some better prices for compostable food service ware. So here, the overview of the biospecs, just so you're aware, is that it's broken down into two different categories. So the first category are what we call the mandatory sustainable criteria. And that is similar to systems like the ePEAT system for computers, in that we really looked at all the different things that are out there and figured out what are A, the most important, and B, the ones that we think a relatively large number of products could meet, so that if you're a purchaser, you're going to be able to get a competitive bid with those mandatory sustainability criteria. And those are put into specifications, or they also could be put into a point system if you wanted to have the whole solicitation be in a point system. Second is that there are some desirable sustainability criteria. These are ones that we know a little bit less about. We have less information about which products actually would meet those criteria. And so the idea with this is to have the mandatory sustainability criteria be the minimum that each product would need to meet, and then figuring out ways to give points or also to disclose information about additional sustainability criteria. So if you really want to define the most sustainable bio-based compostable food service ware, by going through your process, you could award that either through points or by looking at information that's disclosed by vendors on a questionnaire. So the biospecs can be applied to pretty much any compostable food service type products, and that can include things like everything from the cutlery to the plates and bowls, clamshells, and gloves. So it's pretty universal, so that you could change out the entire system. And what we've learned in the process of studying these compostable food service ware items is that there are a wide range of bioplastics that are out there, and the biospecs are designed to be able to take that into consideration, and also to recognize that there are some products that are not bioplastics that may fit into your system as well. Those can be things such as paper plates or wood or bamboo. And so all of these things can be covered and are covered by the biospecs. So now I want to just talk with you about the mandatory criteria. These are the things that we think are really serious, very critical for them to be included and have as mandatory criteria. And then I'll be talking about the desirable criteria second. So first of all, we have a minimum amount of bio-based material. We want to make sure that the product actually is bio-based material and is not essentially petroleum-based product with just a little bit of filler that breaks down, and then it would break down into smaller pieces of plastic. We also want to make sure that if there are any nanomaterials, that they're declared by the vendor. We don't know the extent to which nanomaterials are being incorporated into food service ware, so at this point this is more of a disclosure type item, but it's a mandatory disclosure. We also want to make sure that there's no fluorinated compounds, and I will be talking about them, Teflon type chemicals that are added as coatings. Probably the most important is the commercial compostability. A number of jurisdictions that have been doing compostable food service ware specifications have used this criteria exclusively, and so the purpose of the biospecs is to get purchasers to look more broadly, but commercial compostability is essential. Products that are made in compliance with all applicable laws and regulations, we just want to make sure that that's being followed. And for purchasers, it's important to know if something does go wrong, they have a way to be able to go back to the vendor and say, hey, we saw there's a problem. The product should be offered in bulk so that they're not all wrapped individually, cutting down on packaging, make sure the packaging itself, they have this nice compostable food service ware, and then it's put into a box with some polystyrene. That would not be acceptable. And also is important that you receive samples so that you can do your pilot test. So these are all the mandatory criteria. So going through each of these mandatory criteria, the first one is the minimum bio-based materials. And what I'm going to show you, I'm just going to walk you through the biospecs, is that for each of these, we tried to make these as easy as possible to tell you what types of eco-logos to look for. And so in this is one that should be familiar because Ron just went over this. So we want to make sure that all the products other than cutlery have at least 90% bio-based carbon content, and the cutlery must contain at least 75%. And like the USDA BioPreferred Program, This is based on an assessment of what is relatively available in the market. And bio-based carbon essentially means the percentage of weight of total carbon. So if there is 100% carbon, of the 100% carbon, you want to make sure 90% of it or more is actually bio-based carbon, and there's an ASTM method to utilize for that. So one of the ways that you can verify it is that you'd have USDA bio-based label, and that instead of this 57%, it would actually say 90% or higher, and that would be a way to verify it. So just having the USDA certified bio-based label is not in itself enough. Similarly, there's another program that verifies bio-based content. So the documentation would be either independent laboratory analysis or verification by USDA or another independent third party that it has the either 90% or higher or 75% or higher. So I just put this slide in to show that it's important not to be fooled by greenwashing. There is a ton of greenwashing out there associated with compostable food service ware. A lot of times the specifications or the products will be marketed just by saying either biodegradable or compostable or even high bio-based content. It's really important to make sure that the label is one that you recognize. So the difference between the one on the left is just someone saying that you don't really know how much it is, versus the USDA certified bio-based label shows you exactly how much bio-based content is in that material. Some products are automatically going to qualify for this. So if you had a fork that was uncoated, or a paper plate that's uncoated, or all of these would automatically qualify. Now, it's important to make sure it's uncoated because some of them will have plastic coatings. But if they are products made of 100% uncoated wood or bamboo or paper or another obviously plant-based material other than a bio-based plastic, they automatically qualify. And this is important because the other ones won't be covered necessarily under the bio-based programs. They may or they may not. Here's another nanomaterials declaration. As I mentioned, we just want the bidder to declare whether or not the nanomaterials are intentionally added to offer to any of the products that are offered on the contract. And that's at this point to collect information about what types of nanomaterials are being included. And that may get strengthened later if there's more information determined about nanomaterials of concern in these products. Fluorinated compounds are actually probably a bigger, more likely concern, especially with things like paper plates. And I don't know if anyone has heard about this, but I put the picture of the popcorn bag in there because that was one of the first places that it was determined. So paper plates sometimes will have a layer of liquid impregnated Teflon, just like the Teflon that is in your pots and pans, and it's essentially used as a grease barrier. And I had heard in California they tried to pass a law, it was vetoed by Governor Schwarzenegger a couple of years ago, that would prevent any food service products from having perfluorinated or fluorinated compounds in them. And so this would be something that we want to make sure that the bidders verify that the products don't contain these compounds, just to essentially make sure that they don't end up in the compost because they're bioaccumulative and toxic chemicals. And there's different types of laboratory tests that can be used to verify that they don't have them or whether they do, and we're asking vendors to disclose the type of grease barrier that's used in their products. As I mentioned, commercial compostability is one of the most important requirements because the benefits of compostable food service ware really are magnified when you're actually able to incorporate the product into a commercial food waste composting system. So most of the certifications for compostability are not for your backyard compost, but they're for a commercial composting facility that operates under certain types of conditions. And so you want to make sure that the bio-based food service ware products are certified as compostable in a commercial facility based on verified compliance with any of one of these standards. And the main thing usually in the U.S. is the ASTM standard D6400. That's for 100% bio-based plastics, or D6868, which is for paper that's coated with a bioplastic. But some of the materials may be coming in from other countries, and so these are the other standards that you can look for. To make it easy, we have put into the specifications the eco logos that you can look for. And so the one that's going to be most commonly found in the U.S. is the BPI, the Biodegradable Products Institute logo. But we also determined that these other eco labels are ones that also follow the same ASTM standard and are incorporated in it. So if you saw something that was a Green Seal certified product, it would automatically also meet that ASTM standard for commercial compostability. The documentation that's required, and so for each of the biospecs specifications and criteria, we have a little section that tells you what type of documentation is required in order for the vendor to properly comply. So we want to make sure that either the product or the packaging contains the certification logo for BPI or one of the other ones. If it's BPI certified, the manufacturer must be listed on the BPI website. Right now, the BPI website doesn't list individual products like the same way Green Seal does or Energy Star does, but I think they're working towards that. And it's also important to note that things like paper and wood and other obvious plant-based materials aren't necessarily going to have this compostability logo on it. And so if you find those types of products, you can look to see the Cedar Grove composting site, which is one up in Seattle, is maintaining a list of products, both bio-based plastics and other materials that they are tagging and are showing that they actually break down in their composting site. So the bidder must disclose material and coatings of each product offered to make sure that if it is a paper product, we know what the coating is. Other mandatory products for biospecs or mandatory criteria include, as I mentioned, must be in compliance with laws, offered in bulk, no polystyrene or PVC packaging, and the samples that are provided. So now we get into the additional sustainability criteria away from the mandatory. These are bio-based content of greater than 90% that you can get additional points for, additional sustainability attributes of the bio-based material itself, or sustainability of the bio-based product manufacturing process, end-of-life considerations, transportation, and packaging. So I want to make sure that both the material itself that goes into making the product as well as the product itself are sustainably manufactured. So just like the first bio-based content, the way to document higher bio-based content is the same way, using the USDA Bio-Based Product Certification or another method through the FinCot certification or independent lab tests as well. In terms of sustainability attributes of the bio-based material, making sure that there's sustainable production of the bio-based feedstocks, there are a number of different certification programs for different types of materials that might be going into a bio-based product. So if something is 100% FSC, or it's Rainforest Alliance or organic or any of these other certifications, they would get points under the biospecs system. Another important attribute is that especially if it's corn, that it's grown without genetically modified organisms. So any products that are out there, we don't know the extent to which products are GMO free, and so we didn't make it a mandatory criteria, but the bidders are strongly encouraged to offer products for which contain a GMO free material, and there are a number of different organizations that will verify that, and so that's the documentation that would be provided. If the products are not GMO-free. The companies can also get what's called a GMO offset certificate that shows that they were that the company actually purchased GMO-free feedstocks and offsets to offset the acreage that they're using. So maybe the GMO-free corn would be used for food, and then that would cover the acreage that is being grown for these types of materials. And there's a couple of programs there. One is called Working Landscapes Certificate Program and NatureWorks Source Offset Program. So if they have any of those, they can note them and they would get points for those. Sustainability of the bio-based product manufacturing. So we're going from the feedstock now into the manufacturing of the actual product. So we want to make sure that the products are not containing chemicals of concern, that they additional points would be given for recycled content, that the workers are protected, as well as the environment during manufacturing, and that transportation impacts are minimized. So the way this would work is that here's avoidance of chemicals of concern. So they would get tests for demonstrating that there's no carcinogens or reproductive toxins, no halogens at all, like chlorinated compounds, so they could have a Chlorine-Free Products Association certification, heavy metal-free, phthalates, and bisphenol A. All of these they can document. If they document, they get the points, either through lab tests or other types of testing of the products. If the products contain recycled content, they can also get some points, and so they can either have the material FSC recycled, or if the products are Green Seal certified, they have a minimum amount of 45% recycled content. So all of these things are ways to get to the verification and documentation. Protection of workers and the environment, they get points if they're following different independent third-party certifications for various different health and safety standards. They can get points for minimizing transportation impacts, and the primary way that they can get that is by having materials, the product, the feedstock and the product manufactured in North America, so you're reducing transportation impacts. They also, there's a place for additional types of things that they could get points for. One is EPA's Smart Way transportation program, if they're transported through that. Then we get into the end-of-life considerations. So we want to make sure not only that it's theoretically compostable, but it's compostable and it's acceptable in a local commercial composting facility, that the product itself is clearly labeled compostable, so it's easy for the sorters to pick it out. And in some cases, you may have a backyard or a sense more of a commercial on-site composting facility. So there are some certifications for those, far fewer products. So we didn't make it a mandatory criteria, but some of them are. Some are biodegradable in a marine environment. So if it was being used around water or on a boat, you may want to have that as well. And some are biodegradable in fresh water and certified to that. Packaging is another thing to look at. You want to make sure the packaging itself is also compostable, or it's easily recyclable. So here you have some paper packaging with this product, that they're devoid of chemicals of concern. So, because what's likely to happen is that the packaging could easily end up in the same waste system as well. And then you may want to give points if the packaging has some post-consumer recycled content. So that gets to the end of the bio specs, and I wanted to just shed some light on a few things. One is performance testing, and then availability and specifications, and then cost. So we get the question all the time, is performance testing necessary? So you may not need to performance test products. You may just look and see, oh, there's information out there about other people that have tried it. We have some performance tests listed on the SBC and the RPN websites, and you may feel comfortable just going forward with anything that meets the minimum biospecs criteria. But you also may want to test to make sure that the products actually work in your system, make sure that even just the product sizes and shapes work. You want to also, you may also want to check with your composting facility to determine whether they need to test the products and ensure that they work for them. And this is something that's come up a number of times, that some of the composting facilities don't necessarily feel comfortable with compostable food service ware. So we, in our area, we actually worked with one of the early adopters, which was Santa Clara County, and essentially worked with them to work with their composting facility, and they found anything that was acceptable in the Cedar Grove composting facility, and there's a Cedar Grove approved list, they felt comfortable having the county purchase for their facilities. So you may want to do a kitchen walkthrough just to see what products they're currently using, what could be replaced with compostables if you're not going to move to a reusable system, which also is a great option. Determine how the compostables would fit into the food service process. This is an important time to get buy-in from the kitchen staff, and then look also at the food waste collection system to see how the whole thing would fit together. You may want to take some photographs just so you can remember how everything worked. You may want to go out to the compost facility and do a tour. We did that in Santa Clara County. It was really helpful just to understand how their process worked and what they accept and don't accept, whether they're trying to get organic certification, because if they are, they may have some issues with accepting compostable food service ware, and then showing them the materials that you are thinking of doing. They may even want to run them through their system, again, then to get buy-in from the compost facilities, because what you don't want to have happen is to go through this whole process, get these compostable food service products, and then find out that they're just screening them out at the end. To find potential alternatives, you'll probably be starting with your local food service and restaurant supply vendors. You may want to choose among the ones that are approved by the Cedar Grove composting facility. You can look for potential products on the USDA BioPreferred and Biobased certified list. And you may want to check with other purchasers, and some will have their lists up. San Francisco, for example, has an SF-approved list of products that, that they're using in their facilities. But one of the best options may really be to issue a request for information using the biospecs and then seeing what comes back, and then taking that information out to your composting site and then pilot testing those products. So once we developed a list of products, we started tracking what it was. So I'm kind of taking you through the pilot test that we did with Santa Clara County. So we figured out which things were BPI approved and Cedar Grove approved, and then we started just collecting samples, and we put them all in a spreadsheet. We coded all the samples after we requested samples from the product distributors. Some cases we had to get them directly from the manufacturers. We gave them all an ID code, and we made sure that we remembered which lids went with the products, because it's easy to get that confused as well.
Hey, Alicia, we're going to need to start wrapping it up a bit.
Okay, great. So I'll just finish up by saying there's certain things you want to look at in your performance testing, which is the size and shape and strength, and whether it's hot or cold, and how the things feel, and whether they, you know, whether they hold up in your system. Then you can put all the information. We developed actually a performance testing sheet to track how well each of the products did, and we rated each thing from 1 to 5. On the test day, we determined that it was important to test all the different things at the same time, so we would have a basis of comparison, and to make sure that we had extra hot water and other things, and tried all the different things like stacking the things with full, you know, the trays and everything with full, and clamshells with full amounts of food to make sure that they would actually hold up. Then we evaluated each product. As I said, we went from 1 to 5. We took notes, and then we put all the information into a spreadsheet. And here's a sample so you could see what the overall scores were. And so they looked both at the environmental and the overall performance score. Things to think about when you're purchasing are that your local suppliers may not have all the products. Some of the product manufacturers sell direct. Some of the green product vendors don't offer conventional food service ware products, so you don't want to require the vendor necessarily to offer both. And that it's very difficult to track down the manufacturing locations of some of the products. I just wanted to end by saying here's a bid sheet that you can use. It's on the SBC website, and we'll walk you through the various different information about the biospecs. And then in terms of cost, you may not know the total cost of the products until you go out to bid, but it's important to make sure that you give the bio-based materials every opportunity to get the same kind of discounts and to factor in the cost savings from avoided landfill fees. Our basic lessons learned were that there's a lot of products out there, there's a lot of greenwashing, there's a wide range of quality and compostability, and you want to coordinate with your kitchen and with your composting facility. You may have to negotiate with your composting facility if they're not able to handle those materials, but that there's an increasing number of high quality certified products and good options to work with. There's a number of early adopters. I talked to you about Santa Clara County. We also have incorporated the biospecs into a vendor questionnaire, so if you want to see that, that was through Practice Green Health. And we're just about to go out to bid with the state of Connecticut to add the biospecs to their statewide contract for food service ware. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alicia. That was very informative. Just as a follow-up to her presentation, I'd like to ask the audience if you would like to be contacted about becoming an early adopter of the biospecs for purchasers. If you could just let us know by selecting one of the following. While you're doing that, I'd like to present our final presenter. She is Karen Hamilton. Karen manages the Environmental Purchasing Program for King County, Washington. Under her leadership, King County agencies have pioneered and institutionalized the purchase of many environmentally preferable products that save money in the process. Her program has won numerous awards and has been presented as a model for other jurisdictions in various publications and at national and international conferences. So, Karen, let me make you our next presenter. Karen? All right. Karen, I can't seem to hear you. Have you muted yourself? Karen? Bear with us, folks. I think she's changing her audio mode that she will be on shortly. Karen, are you there now?
Yes,
Otherwise,
can you
we
hear
will
me now?
start. Yes, perfect.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I kept trying to connect. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here and share our experiences. My presentation will be brief, about 10 minutes, so we have time for questions. I'm sorry for the technological delay. But I'd like to start just talking a little bit about King County. We are located on the Puget Sound in Seattle in Washington State. We're nearly twice as large as the average county with approximately 1.9 million people. We're the 14th most populous county in the nation. And we're one of 39 counties in Washington State that employs about 13,000 people. In addition to regular county services, we operate a major metropolitan transit system of about 1,400 buses that go through Seattle and the county. We operate 3 wastewater treatment plants, with a huge one that just went online last year that supports both King County and Snohomish County just to the north of us. We have a small international airport at Boeing Field, and we have a landfill that is slated to close this decade. We have many overarching environmental policies, beginning with our strategic plan. It's a 5-year plan that talks about safety, health, economic, environmental sustainability, and service goals. Specifically, the environmental sustainability goals has an objective to minimize King County's operational environmental footprint. To support that plan, we have several other programs, including the climate plan, which asks us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and to adapt whenever possible. We have an energy plan that asks agencies to reduce energy use in buildings and in vehicle use and increase renewable energy purchases. We're on track to meet our 50% renewable energy goal this year. We have a green building policy that asks new projects to be certified to LEED Gold or to meet the criteria where it's not possible for certification. And we also have an environmental purchasing policy, and this is the program that I manage that helps to interlink a lot of these programs. We ask agencies to buy recycled and environmentally preferable products whenever practicable. We do have some mandates that want recycled paper that's used in all government functions with a minimum of 30% recycled content. Last year, we updated the policy to encourage more use of 100% recycled content copy paper and also asked for a 20% paper reduction use in county agencies, and we're well on our way. We've already met the 10% reduction this past year. We also asked for electronics recycling to meet the Basel Action Network's e-Steward certification. Now, we've been recycling with a local recycler for over 10 years, but we now ensure that it's e-Steward certified so that we can ensure that our products our e-waste is being handled in the most environmentally responsible manner and not shipped whole to other countries. And that's been a successful program. We also require our agencies to buy re-refined motor oil, and have been using that for about 12 years in all of our various fleets, including our bus system. And then the policy also asks us to consider multiple attributes of products, such as things that are less toxic, resource efficient, and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Now, this is open-ended, but it allows us room to evaluate other environmentally preferable products as they come available. And we plan to update it this year to even include more specific goals that list standards and certifications that we've approved, and to help us to align with all the other policies that I mentioned. So one of the first products that we bought with bio-based content was printing inks. We have a local in-house print shop, and they use the soy-based inks for 98% of their printing. They found that it was easy to use by the employees, is available in all colors that they needed, are cost competitive, and are low VOC content. The only thing that they haven't been able to use it in is in canvas printing, and that had more to do with the drying time and the equipment that they had available. But otherwise, they really like the printing ink that they're using. In fact, they're an EnviroStars certified business, which is a local green business certification that documents pollution prevention efforts and sustainable product choices. And when we use printers outside of the county, we ask them to be EnviroStars certified whenever possible as well, so we can ensure that we're using soy-based inks and other environmentally preferable technologies. We also use a lot of soap in our facilities. We have many downtown offices, including jails, and we have many bus spaces throughout the large county. We use a variety of soaps and hand sanitizers, including a lot of foaming soap. We buy these in bulk, and then we refill the dispensers as necessary. These all meet the USDA established minimum bio-based content requirements. And in fact, in our employee kitchens, even the soap that we use has bio-based content that our employees come in contact with. When we contract for janitorial services, we supply green products to the vendors, so they in turn are learning more about the bio-based products that are available. Our facilities search for an alternative to a mastic remover that they were using. They were generating a lot of complaints due to the strong odor of the chemicals. So the project manager went through one of our local vendors and asked for alternatives and looked at 2 soy-based products, and they tested them out, and they chose the one that they liked best. It had a mild odor, was easy to use, and it was cost competitive. As Ron mentioned, not everything's going to cost you more. This particular product required a little bit more elbow grease to begin with and a little bit of a learning curve, but they really like it and they're not generating any complaints now. This also is a CARB compliant product, which is a California Air Resources Board for low VOCs. A product we've used for a long time is a bio-based hydraulic oil. Our equipment shop has used it over 10 years, and they use it in all their equipment from lawnmowers to tractors. In fact, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a picture of our hybrid electric mobile lube truck, and the hydraulic oil is used here as well. They chose to use this because it was biodegradable and has lower toxicity than petroleum-based oil. This is particularly important in case of a spill. And the equipment shop manager said it was an easy, seamless transition for the employees for this switch. In fact, they placed stickers on all equipment to just educate what product goes in there. And of course, in this shop, this is the only one available. In fact, they ask that new pieces of equipment be pre-filled with bio-based fluids at the time of delivery. And at first, this was a little bit of a challenge doing some education, but now it's just a known for our distributors that this is what we want. Last year, we purchased 2,000 gallons of lubricants just for this equipment shop. The price initially was more expensive, but we felt in case of a spill, it actually saved us money. And due to petroleum prices going up, this is very cost competitive. This shop is also an EnviroStars certified business. The county used biodiesel for 5 years. We started with a 2-year pilot of using B5 or a 5% mix of biodiesel blended with diesel and increased that to a 20% mix. This was run in all our diesel equipment, even the fleet that I mentioned of 1,400 buses. We had help early on with the cost. It was higher to purchase biodiesel, but our local utility gave us some offsets because of their greenhouse gas mitigation program. In fact, in 2007, we sourced the product locally from Eastern Washington canola seeds, and we did that for approximately 2 years. Unfortunately, this was suspended in 2008 over concern of skyrocketing costs of all fuel and wondering about the environmental benefit. Well, it turned out we couldn't justify the cost at that time due to unknown climate greenhouse gas emission reductions, but we have since reevaluated and we're hoping to start up again this year or so due to updated climate goals. Now, we really liked this product. It worked great. Over the life of the contract, we used 3 million gallons of B100 that was blended with diesel. So it's definitely a consideration, and we can use a lot of locally based companies, and we hope to be able to start that up again. We produce a sustainability report. The last year was the first year that we consolidated reporting from the 4 programs I mentioned, which are climate change, energy, green building, and EPP. Having a single comprehensive report covering these related efforts provides several benefits, including integrating performance measures, providing a single reference for the public, and facilitating collaboration and coordination on diverse but related issues. And our 2011 report will be published at the end of the month. In addition, all of the programs have supplemental detail online, so you can find out specifically what we purchased. And as a county, we've only scratched the surface of buying bio-based products. As more certified products come online, we'll be able to investigate and test and incorporate these into our purchasing practices. We're probably buying a lot more that I'm even unaware of, but one thing that Alicia mentioned was BPI certified can liners that we use for our food. We do use in our food waste composting program that meet the Cedar Grove composting requirement. So I thought of a couple others just as I was going through this presentation. So I think having the BioPreferred program help us to easily identify which products are bio-based will definitely help us in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I think it helped many of the attendees of the webinar to see someone actually using these products. So that was very informative. Thank you to all of our speakers today. I see we have about 15 minutes left of this webinar, so we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. If you do have a question, please pop it into the chat box right now so we can try and get to it. The first question I have is for Ron. Actually, anybody could answer this one. The question is, for bio-based products that result in some form of waste, for example, packaging products, does the procurement preference require that requisite waste management strategies be in place?
No, and I have to say right up front that what we have one charge, and that is to increase the use of these renewable, sustainable raw materials to make these products. Had we had some of the authorities that were discussed today, it would be a far different program. We play in the environmental arena, and I think there is a green program, but we are limited because we don't have the legislative authority to do a lot of these things. Now, having said that, we are very much encourage folks to recycle, number one. Number two, if you have a container that's compostable, that's even better. And we have labeled some compostable containers. And the compostable part of it is something that has to be self-certified by the individuals who are using the product. But if you've got a PLA-based product, for instance, it's more than likely going to be compostable. And that answers a question that's a little further along that dealt with compostability and recyclability and biodegradable. Yes is the short and long answer to, are we trying to encourage information on this? There is a spot on our website, yes, and we're doing that. We're also working with Steve Mojo and his group, BPI, as well as the bioplastics folks around town, to see if we can get more information circulated to more consumers, because there is lots and lots of confusion out there. Just because a product is bio-based doesn't mean it's compostable, and does not mean it's biodegradable. They see the bio and they think, well, that's the way it goes. So we've got some studies and surveys that indicate the confusion in the consumer's mind. So that probably was not the answer you wanted to hear, but it's the facts. How do the buyers or agents know what products contain bio-based ingredients or materials. That's what the percentage is on the label. That's what that's all about. As I indicated earlier, we're going to have to make sure that eventually everything complies across the board. However, products that are in the federal side of the program must meet a minimum bio-based content to be part of the program. We're in the process of doing a three-phase, 3-year audit of the entire program, including the label and the federal side of the program. There is some self-certification on the federal side. You have to certify that you meet the minimum bio-based content we set for a particular category. I think at the end of the day, there are some folks that are not going to be part of our program a year, 2 years from now. Does the USDA labeling program include criteria for product efficacy? Yes and no. It doesn't, it's not included on the label, but it is included when the label owner, the procurer of the label, when he or she gets that label there and what they attest to, they must attest to what standards that they meet. And also, if they make any environmental claims, they must substantiate those environmental claims. Again, we're doing an audit, and this is one of the things we're looking at as we begin to audit.
This is Alicia. I would add that I generally think that if you're going to be changing out something that's pretty substantial, like your hydraulic fluid or your cleaning products, generally I would encourage people to pilot test the products, because they're not always, it's not like Green Seal where actually the certification incorporates a specific performance ASTM standard, and so this is a single attribute certification. It's an important single attribute certification, but if you're going to be switching to compostable bags or compostable food service or any of these products, I would definitely encourage people to pilot test those products, because there's even going to be differences among products. So you want to make sure that those products are going to work in your facilities.
I concur 100% with that, Alicia. As a matter of fact, that's been a year working on the USDA cafeteria, trying to get it converted, and it was, people will say that they meet all these tests and all these qualifications, ASTM 6400 for compostable, but I was of the mind to trust but verify, and we did use our own compost facilities out in Beltsville to make sure that we weren't buying a pig in a poke. So yes, absolutely, do a pilot test.
You want to make sure on compostable food service ware that it holds up in the kitchen and it breaks down in the compost pile, and those are a delicate balance. And when we were testing products, what we found is that some products did very, very well and some didn't, and also that different facility had different needs. So in Santa Clara County, for example, one of their largest users was a correctional facility, and their primary concern was that you couldn't break particularly the cutlery and have it be sharp enough that it would turn into a weapon. And some of the products failed miserably. And in fact, some of the products actually that some of the other agencies didn't like because maybe they sort of deformed a little bit when you put them into the soup, the correctional facilities were like, that's fine. We don't care about that. We just need to make sure if it bends but doesn't break, that's exactly what they were looking for. Whereas the other ones didn't care really if it broke, but they wanted to make sure that it actually held up, in hot liquids.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Alicia. I think a good follow-up question to that is, why is cutlery often left out of plastic bans and or bioplastic cutlery held to a lower standard than other product categories when there are options like wood that easily meet biocontent and compostability requirements?
So my experience is that people are going after the big ticket items like the styrofoam. That's the most visible thing that people are trying to get rid of. And so even though your cutlery may be a polystyrene, it's not the big volume item which people are really targeting. Also, the cutlery is one of the more challenging parts of the compostables because it's actually the things that we're hearing has less of a has more of a problem breaking down because it's a little bit thicker. Some of the composting facilities are grinding them first, and other, doing other types of things, maybe running them through their systems twice, so to make sure that they fully break down. The wood products, we had high hopes for the wood products, but our experience and some of the other pilot tests have flunked the wood products because they end up either taking on the taste of the thing, and they just have an odd taste and feel to them when you're using them, sort of like the old using a wooden thing for the little ice cream, which feels a little bit like a tongue depressor. So it can be a little bit challenging. There have been products that have passed the test. Some of the companies are designing the cutlery now with a little bit of a cutout into them so that they'll break down a little bit easier. But they're products that pass, but you need to test everything to make sure they're going to work.
All right, thank you, Alicia. My next question is for Ron. I think because many people look to the USDA for information, is the USDA putting any effort into educating consumers on the difference between bio-based versus biodegradable versus recyclable versus recycled content? Consumers are very confused and many think bio-based are the same as biodegradable. So
yeah, I just addressed that a little bit earlier, and we are putting some effort into that. We continue to do that every time we're out on the stump. Generally, I did not go into in this group today because this is a more sophisticated audience. But yes, we are spending some time and effort in that. And as I indicated, we're trying to work with Steve Mojo's group, the BPI folks, and also the bioplastics group to see if we can together get more information out there. Kate Lewis and I've been talking about this. Kate's the deputy manager here, and she comes to us from EPA, so she's very keen on making sure that we get that information out. But it's not easy. As Kermit the Frog said, it's not easy being green. So we are continuing to do that.
All right, thank you. A question for all three. Have life cycle assessments been carried out on bio-based products?
I have seen some life cycle assessments, mostly coming out of the European Union. And one of the things that really stood out for me is that they actually said that the real benefit of compostable food service ware, for example, comes in when you actually are able to compost it. So that's where you get that additional benefit that really puts things over the hump. And as Ron mentioned, there's different benefits associated with, with purchasing different types of bio-based materials. I'm assuming that they would have various studies on the different types of bio-based materials. Now, I know the EU is doing a lot of work on biofuels, and there is actually a certification coming out for sustainable biofuels to say that, we need to look at how they're actually being sourced to make sure that they're not ripping down a rainforest to get, put in a palm oil plantation. And so the reason for the biospecs for compostable food service ware, and this is for other things, is to make sure that we're optimizing various different inputs into the process so that it pushes it more in the favor of bio-based materials, and you're getting more of the benefits of those.
All of the products that have been qualified for federal purchase have gone through BEES analysis, which is a life cycle program from the Department of Interior, Department of Commerce, NIST. The problem with that, and I actually helped set that up and group us with funded the initial work to get the thing set up. The problem with that is we can do life cycle analysis using BEES or whatever model you want to use on bio-based products, but unless you have a petroleum counterpart or whatever the non-bio-based alternative is, you really don't have anything for people to compare, and that makes it very difficult. We're also at this point, and there was a question there, I'll just take this and fold it right in, that we were asked what's in the new guidelines that we've got out for comment now that to talk about. One of the things that's in there is a discussion about BEES analysis. the Office of Management and Budget asked us to take that out of what we publish in the Federal Register. It's on the website, the Bees analysis is, but it didn't seem to be getting the hits, and people were not really paying that much attention to it. So that's one of the questions we're asking. Should we continue to do bees analysis? I mean, that's a tough question, but I mean, it has to be asked. The other parts of that notice, and I'll just take this because I know this was one of the questions there, is that we're also looking at how we deal with complex assemblies, how we designate those for federal procurement, and we're also going to be looking at how we designate intermediate ingredients. We talked about PLA earlier. Well, PLA now has the label, the polylactic acid, which is a bioplastic, but the federal side of the program will be how are we going to be designating that raw material, and how is that designation going to result in downline usage of the raw material, and how do we designate products that are made from that chemical. So that's some of the stuff that's in that new guidelines out for publication right now. There's about not quite 30 days left to run on that if anybody wants to comment on it.
All right. We're almost to the end of our time, but I wanted to ask, if we can, a few more questions. One of them is, how can holders of government purchase cards be encouraged to purchase bio-based products, particularly when there are constraints such as sheltered workshop preference or small business preference?
I assume that one's for me. If not, I'll take it. You guys can jump in and chime in, whatever. The majority of the companies that are involved with the BioPreferred program are small businesses. So right away, if you look at it, the people who are making these products are companies that have under 500 employees. Many of them are mom and pop operations, literally. There's one of the folks that are out in Ohio that it is and has been for a long, long time, and they make a lubricant. So you've got that. You've also got when you're using your charge card, your smart card. We're making a presentation at the smart card meeting down in Tennessee here next month, or actually in August, 1st of August. And you can buy the Ability One products also. Now, that's not necessarily small business, but it certainly helps the blind and handicapped, and it's another program that the federal government is supporting, not just small businesses, but folks who are disadvantaged to be employed. So I don't think there's not a dichotomy here. Some of your big chemical manufacturers are large businesses, no doubt about it. But by and large, the people who make these products that are in our catalog are fairly small businesses. This is on the federal side.
There are some jurisdictions, and I don't know, Karen, if you guys are doing any of this, but that are really helping their small businesses to be able to offer bio-based products and other, at least other environmentally preferable products, so that there isn't an either or. Oh, we're going to buy from the small vendor, or we're going to buy, you know, from the disadvantaged. So, you know, one of the things you can do to overcome that problem is to have your jurisdiction work directly with your disadvantaged and minority vendors to introduce them to products that are compliant with your green purchasing policy. And in terms of the decentralized purchasing, you can require vendors that sell products through your P-card system to report the same way that other vendors are reporting. And so I would make sure that those vendors are, you know, in the loop on that, and that they're just not getting away with not doing the same type of reporting as other vendors are on your contract.
This is Karen. I would just add that these aren't necessarily contradictory goals. Our small business programs do offer a lot of these type of products, which Ron mentioned. For a county, it's best for us to look for certified products and things where we don't have to do as much legwork up front, and we usually go to our local contractors first to see what's available in the state if possible.
Great. I think we should probably start wrapping up. So my final question is one that was just sent in for Alicia regarding bio-based cutlery and greenwashing. Alicia, what do you see as effective enforcement measures to prevent additive technologies with starch and PS, PP, or PE to continue to sell into the market?
I would say that the best strategy is to use the biospecs to make sure that you're getting a good product that's certified. Certification is always your best strategy, so that you have an independent third party looking at that. Now, that may not help all the other products that are outside your facilities. That's a bigger problem that the composting sites have, and I don't know what you can do to specifically prevent that. But in addition to making sure that your big ticket, facilities are buying products that meet all the mandatory requirements of the biospecs. And again, we hope that if you're interested in doing that, that you'll contact either me or Haral about that. But if there is specific greenwashing going on with a product, you can also take that to the Federal Trade Commission and report it, and they're starting to do more enforcement against greenwashing.
Great.
Or making false claims also. That's the other part. We have a case before the FTC now, which I can't go into any details about, but yeah.
Ron, can you actually tell us one last thing? We got a question in. Can you explain the upcoming changes to the proposed rule?
I kind of hinted on that just a moment ago. I talked about the fact we're looking how we're going to deal with intermediate ingredients, how we're going to deal with complex assemblies. These are questions we're asking, and we're asking for people to take a look at these and do we really want to have these analysis done on all products in the future? We're just asking that question. We're also asking folks to look at the phrase new and emerging markets, which is what we think the program is designed to support. And there are other folks who think we should be opening it wide to cotton t-shirts. Those are the big things in there.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, just because I do still have you on the call, on the webinar, and we are recording this, I do want to get to some of these final questions. One of them is, does the USDA certification require that the product be manufactured and or sourced in the U.S.?
No, the program is pretty wide open. Actually, the test came on the federal side of the program, not the label side of the program. And the Congress thought they had written a domestic piece of legislation, and the word domestic is in the language of 2002 Farm Bill. The U.S. Trade Representative says, no, you're not going down that road. The United States is signatory to a lot of international treaties, and you're going to have to treat these folks and with those treaties, which we have, as just as if they were, quote, a domestic product. So, no, the program is pretty much open to except to some bad actors who are on the scene, which I will not go into those countries, but there are some folks out there that are not participating in our program. But by and large, we've got participation from around the globe, particularly next door with Canada. There's 183 companies from Canada that are part of the program. We've got a number of European companies. We've got folks from Japan, Australia, all over the world. There's a movement going on to increase the amount of bio-based products that are part of the mix as part of our sustainable world.
Food service, where a lot of it is coming in from other countries.
Yeah, and food service, I have to tell you, we had the discussion on this, and it is a really thorny issue. I think everything's okay except for the cutlery, and that's where I have a problem, frankly. And I read recommendation to the USDA to how we green our cafeteria, and I could not pull the trigger on cutlery for a couple reasons. One was cost, and second was the fact that things did not perform as advertised in terms of composting. So again, that one is one you really got to try and make sure that it does indeed work like it's supposed to. I think the paper products, the gas, I think all those kind of serviceware products work very well.
Let me just add, though, that if you're doing a composting program, there is a lot of savings in terms of time and reduction of contaminants if you change over everything so that everything can just be put into the compost. It actually can create a problem if you have some things compostable and some things not. And I would agree that pilot testing of the food serviceware is, particularly the cutlery, is very, very important to make sure it does hold up. in, you know, especially in hot liquids. But I do think that, you know, ultimately it's going to save time and money to be able to divert the food waste from the kitchen wholly. And if you don't have a completely compostable system, it can create lots of challenges.
The other thing you ought to look at is a dewatering system too, if you can, to reduce the cost of transporting the product or food service I'm talking about to the compost operation. And that in that dewatering, you'll generally begin the process by breaking things into smaller increments anyway. So that's something else to look at too, because you don't want to pay to transport water if you can help it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, we're down to 2 more questions. First, are there FDA requirements for food contact of recycled paper content for food packaging?
I can answer that one. There are some, and so what you're largely going to find in the paper plates is post-industrial content, and so there, with recycled paper plates, for example, and paper cups, if they do have recycled content, it often is not post-consumer material. That said, we have started seeing some products that have a small amount of post-consumer recycled content, but then they typically have a barrier, and that barrier can either be, for example, a PLA liner that can be compostable, or sometimes it can be a non, you know, it can be like a plastic liner, so you need to be concerned about that. What we also are seeing in some cases is that there may be layers of recycled paper, and that the layer that directly touches the food would be virgin content, and then the recycled content layer would be sandwiched in between. And so there are ways in which products with recycled content can get the FDA approval. Usually it's with some kind of a liner on top of it.
Great. This last question is for you, Alicia. The product evaluation results that you mentioned for performance testing, are they publicly available?
Yes, we can make them available to anyone, and they can be posted on the RPN and I would assume SBC website.
Great. All right, well, that concludes our webinar. Thank you to all of you speakers. You were fabulous, and also to all of you attendees that hung on till the very end, even though we went 10, 11 minutes over time. You will see a little poll when we end this webinar, so please feel free to send in any other questions or comments you had, and I hope you enjoyed the webinar today. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.